So we're talking to Chris Hayes, MSNBC anchor and the author of this excellent new book, The Siren's Call: How Attention Became the World's Most Endangered Resource. Chris, thank you for chatting. Um, First of all, you and I normally meet on your MSNBC set, and I have to say, I'm really liking your book tour clothing. I, I feel there's a side of you that America is getting to experience. I've experienced it in private, but
Yeah,
America nightly doesn't get to experience it. And I just say I think it's another very valuable resource.
thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. One of my friends' group chats was going off about your use of a chain. Oh,
This
there we
right
go.
here,
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe the MSNBC, not MSNBC gap needs to be narrowed slightly.
Narrowed a little, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Ask-
funny. Seth Meyers started like he sort of eschewed suits when COVID hit, and then he's just kept it going post COVID. Sometimes I look at his show, I'm like, oh, that looks so comfy.
So this is such an excellent book, and it provoked me. It made me feel guilty about my behavior. It made me think we should change everything and have a social revolution. All the feelings that books can do at their best. So congratulations.
Thank you. That means a lot.
There's a scene early on that I want you to start with. We have daughters. You have three kids. I have two, but we have daughters roughly the same age. And there's a really touching, heartbreaking scene with your daughter when you're reading with her one morning and you realize how broken both you and the world are. Can you just tell us that scene and story?
Yeah, it's just like sitting next to her on the couch before school, and she wants me to read her book, and she's like cuddled up to me, and her breath is on my cheek, and it's like the greatest feeling in the universe. And as I'm reading to her, I can feel an almost physical tug towards the phone sitting there in my pocket. I say it's pulsing there like Gollum's ring. And I don't look at it like the ability to reject it is important. It means I still have control over myself. But why do I feel it in this moment that is the apex of joy? Like a moment that 30 years from now I'll look back on and be like, "Oh, they went by too fast." And I think that that feeling of interruption or that feeling of being pulled towards being outside ourselves in a moment of focus is so endemic to the times. And particularly to pull us away. I mean, I start with the metaphor of Odysseus on the mast avoiding the sirens, and ultimately that epic is about his desire to get home, to get back to the woman he loves, and to get back to his family. And like the journey is all the things trying to interrupt him and stop him from doing that. And what we want is to get home. What we want is to be with our family. What we want is to read to our children. And it feels like this world we've constructed for ourselves is interrupting and um, derailing that.
And the reason I think it's such a powerful story is the moment with your daughter, our entire bodies and being have been primed for thousands and thousands of years to respond to that moment, to savor that moment,
Yeah.
to offer protection. So, like that is deep, the deepest training we have.
Deepest. Yep.
How is it that this thing, which is like 15 years old, right? We have not had enough time to evolve to it, but it is clearly tapping into some deep things in us. What is it about this thing that can even get in the conversation with the deepest instincts in your body? Like, how can that even be a competition?
Because it's also working on the deepest part of us. So, for a few reasons. One is we have this faculty for attention that is, we've evolved to save us from danger, right? So, let's say you're, with your child on the savannah 100,000 years ago, before humans have settled down into an agrarian society, and you're focused on them, and then there's a rustling in the bushes of something dangerous. It's that rustle and your attention going to it before your conscious will that's the source of all this, because we have this faculty for involuntary attention. If
If
you're
you loved your daughter too much in that moment,
You
you
would
would
be
both
toast.
die.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So we have evolved, and it's an incredible faculty. I mean, it really is amazing. Like you could be locked into something, and if someone breaks a glass or someone fires a gun, and I've been in situations, reporting situations where I'm locked in and someone fires a gun. Your entire physiology moves towards the source of that. So that's as deep and as central to us as that moment of that feeling of care and love.
And in its origin, not toxic. In its origin, important.
Not toxic. Yeah. And in its origin, not at all toxic. And in fact, being able to I mean, attention is an incredible thing we have. I mean, dogs have it too, but we have an amazing version of it, which is at any given moment, we're faced with infinite stimulus. I mean, the only way to navigate the world, like if you're out and looking at a forest, like if you equally paid attention to each leaf, right? You wouldn't be able to like make sense of anything. It's the ability to focus, to withdraw attention from some things and put it on others, and then to have this compulsory sensation if things go sideways. And this fight between the kind of part of us that wants to direct our will, right, to what we want to focus on, my daughter, and then the part that is always kind of scanning in the background for some interruption, some danger, something we need to know about in the moment that is pre-conscious. It's the war between those two things that we have that our current version of attention capitalism is exploiting. Is sort of en masse and on scale attempting to monetize.
And but of course, sticking with that moment on the couch, it is not in fact a rustling in the bushes. It is there's that there's no probability.
There's
I've been to your
nothing.
house. There's no chance of a lion
Yes.
breaking out anywhere near there. Um, so what have they done? And you're a smart person who knows that. So what have they done in the invention, whether it's social media systems, whether it's notifications on a phone? What have they done to trick you
Mm-hmm.
into implicating that system that presumably, that doesn't get implicated by everything, doesn't get implicated
Yeah.
by, all kinds of things that are bright and shiny. What is specifically about these new technologies that you focus on in the book able to trick your lion detector into action?
They're engineered to train our, well, first of all, they're engineered to interrupt us and compel our attention, right? Like the best example of this, and I have notifications turned off, but like the haptic feedback on your phone. Like that's happening at a physical sensation that bypasses your will. If you feel something buzz in your pocket, like before you get to decide whether you want to notice or not, you're noticing it, right? So they have engineered a bunch of ways to bypass conscious attention. And then, and this is really important, and one of the things I really try to wrestle with the book, this is something that can be trained over time, can shrink or expand over time based on what we do with our minds. Which is to say, the more accustomed we get to interruption, the more habituated we are towards finding diversion, the less comfortable we become sitting in the moment with our own thoughts or sitting there reading to your daughter or sitting doing anything. And the more that you come to crave the interruption, the more that you come to crave the diversion. And that's also that's working on a deep part of us philosophically and spiritually. And one of the things I write about in the book is that that part of us that is feels a discomfort even sitting with our own thoughts, that's really old too. That's a really old part of us. And the promise of this technology in some ways is to relieve that, to relieve us of any discomfort we have just being in our own minds, which is the discomfort of being alive as a human and endemic to being human, proper to humanity.
Wow. When I was writing my last book, which ended up being called The Persuaders, I tried to call it Persuasion first, and my publisher was like, "No, Jane Austen did that," and I was like, "I know, I'm trying to play with
Yeah.
that," and they're like, "You can't play with that."
Yeah.
Um, Similarly, you not with the title, but with theme, you're trying to do something very ambitious here, which is you are trying to update Marx in a way.
Yeah.
And I think you pull it off, and you argue that what Marx kind of taught us with regard to the extraction of another resource, wage labor, which had not at that time necessarily been understood to have been commodified in the way that he was trying to uh, distill it. You argue that attention is essentially the successor in
Yeah.
that story. And the most I remember in college reading Marx and thinking it was all about communism from what I childhood the alienation. I remember reading about alienation for the first time, and it's just this completely eye-opening, mind-opening.
Yes.
That's probably the thing 25 years later that I still carry with me at
Yes.
a daily level. Can you
Yeah.
talk about the effort to update Marx and this notion of alienation, both in the wage labor story of the 19th century and attention story of today?
Yeah. So I'll start with Marx's basic story about wage labor, which is, look, human toil, human effort, us doing stuff, that long predates labor as a category. It long predates a system of wages where you're paid for that work. And his point is that the transformation of capitalism takes this thing that's inside us, the product of our effort and will, and commodifies it, puts it on a market exchange, and extracts it from us. And it going from something internal to us to something external to us produces alienation. The source of alienation is the feeling of a thing that should be internal to us being outside of us being estranged from. And so his point, both in an objective sense about the actual value of the labor and a subjective sense of like how you feel about it, is that your work gets transformed into a product outside of you whose value you do not own and gets sold off that you don't see much of the share of. And I think even if you're not a Marxist, which I'm not, this description of that transformation, to your point, is absolutely profound and correct
And
about
captured something about just what work feels like in the
right.
modern
And particularly
world.
when you think about the conditions. I mean, someone who's working in a sweatshop 14 hours a day, 6 days a week feels fundamentally like some deep human part of themselves has been taken from them. I think something's happening similar along the same lines of the tension. This thing is internal to us. We want to control where it goes, which is really the substance of our lives. The sum totality of our consciousness is where I put my thoughts at a given moment. And now a system exists of very sophisticated corporations and multi-billion dollar companies, some of the largest and most powerful in the world, whose CEOs are arrayed with the President of the United States at his inauguration, where their business model is to take that attention from us and